This movie's title is a complete lie. Nobody hitchhikes, and they are clearly not schoolgirls, which, I mean, in the context of what happens in this film is actually a good thing, especially since, France in the 70s, you never know, but I'm offended. I don't like being lied to, Jean Rollin. You silly bastard. Today I'm covering 1973's Schoolgirl Hitchhikers, directed by regular of the channel, Jean Rollin. But this one is very different from what I've covered so far because it's smut. And I know what you're thinking, but Spooky, isn't Jean Rollin just always doing smut? And you're correct, but usually he has a horror aspect to his smut. Even when he's contracted to do actual hardcore films, he still, manages to put in some vampirism or some supernatural element. But Schoolgirl Hitchhikers doesn't have any of that. In fact, it's more of a cop thriller, well, a crime thriller, who ends on a big joke.
Vous avez l'air tellement bouleversé.
We follow two girls, and we can assume they're schoolgirls because one of them wears a skirt. The definition of schoolgirl is used very lightly in this. Again, that's not a bad thing, especially, because it's smut. Jackie, the blonde one with the skirt, and Monique, which is actually the name of my grandmother, so that made it weird whenever they started lezzing out. And they're camping, they're on vacation, from school, I guess. And they're looking for somewhere to pitch a tent, which is ironic because I was the one pitching a tent during this. Genius writing, good job Spooky, I'm gonna go. Monique is a bit of a rascal, and she spots a house that's completely empty. Well, that's what they think. In fact, it's a house that's for sale, so logically, nobody lives in there. Obviously. And she convinces her friend Jackie to go in the house because it's better than a tent. I'm also not a fan of camping. So they get into the house and realize that there's in fact nobody there, so they decide to go in the bedroom and do the business. And the first 30 minutes of this film is basically just sex scene after sex scene, which I'm not complaining about because Jackie and Monique, not my grandmother, are quite lovely ladies. But after their munching session, Jackie falls asleep and Monique hears something. They're not alone. In fact, somebody else uses this villa as a campout. It's Fred, and we assume that Fred is a gangster because he has an ugly mustache, he's pale as shit, and he has a scar in his face. He also has a gun, but And since Monique is a bit of a thirsty little devil, she goes to see Fred and they do it like mammals do. Eventually, Jackie wakes up and she joins in on the fun. Fred is quite the ladies' man, which is bizarre since he looks like a car salesman or the guy that buys you alcohol when you're underage. So they frolic for an entire night, and the next day the ladies leave him be. Which is where we get to the conflict of this film, 40 minutes in. Fred is a gangster who stole some jewelry, and his boss lady comes in and looks for the jewelry, but the jewelry is not in the safe anymore. Uh-oh, quite the predicament. So of course they assume that the two lovely ladies stole it from them, so they go to catch them. And luckily for them, everything in this movie is in about a kilometer radius, so everybody is easy to find. They find the two ladies who were actually camping and they kidnap them. So then this movie gets really dark with some pretty naughty torture scene. They torture Jackie, they realize that, she doesn't know anything, so they're like, let's get Monique and ask her the questions. But Monique is with the other member of the gang and she uses her sex appeal to get out of jail, which she does by seducing the man and hitting him with a vase, and then she runs away to see her friends who are also gangsters. I guess they live like 2 minutes away from them because she just shows up like in a scene. During that time, they're like, let's hide Jackie because they're surely gonna come back. And that's exactly what they do. And then we get this gunfight, which is actually pretty cool, between the two gang members. But eventually, Monique gets caught and she is brought to the Chinese pavilion, which again is like a minute away from the villa. And instead of torturing her, well, Fred makes sweet, sweet love to her. my kind of torture.
J'adore quand tu me tortures comme ça.
Eventually, Lady Boss and Fred are like, well, I don't think any of these women know what's going on, so the jewelry must still be at the house. This movie is like a British crime comedy. It's so silly.
J'ai comme l'impression qu'on leur a coupé l'appétit.
Jackie and the gang had planned for this, so they stayed at the house waiting for them. The next morning when they show up, we get more of the, you know, hold up crime thingy, where everybody is just pointing guns at each other, and then Fred is like, let's torture the gangster secretary. So the lady who hangs out with the gangster, who hangs out with Monique, again, these are supposed to be schoolgirls. What are they doing, hanging out with a gang member and his secretary? I don't know, it just gets silly. And again, Fred's method of torture is just having sex with her. And I forgot to mention, but the soundtrack in this is silly. For some reason, there's some military drums. Like little drummer boy type shit. Like, what is it doing in a sex comedy / crime thriller? And after a while we realize the comedy of error that's going on. You see, nobody has the jewelry! So all of this was for nothing. Who actually has the jewelry? Well, the owner of the house who puts it on sale, because yes, the house is on sale. That doesn't mean that it's abandoned. And then they use Monique to seduce the man who owns the house, and he offers her diamonds, and they get out of their hiding spot, and then the man is like, oh, take them all, they're fake. Again, comedy of error. So boss lady turns to Fred and she's like, what the fuck, they're fake? And Fred is like, yeah, I was gonna tell you that. So all of this was over jewelry that Monique and Jackie didn't steal at all, and not only that, the jewelry was fake all along. Man, this movie is so silly and weird and I love it. They get into a little argument, then they go back into the house and Monique and Jackie, they're just lezzing out. They can't be stopped. They're just two little rascals who are always making love. The end. So what did I think of Jean Rollin's schoolgirl Hitchhikers? This movie is actually pretty fun, and it's really different from Rollin's other work. As I said, it doesn't really have any horror element. In fact, it has none. It's a crime thriller with some goofy little comedy thrown in there, and even stylistically, this movie is pretty average looking. It doesn't have Jean Rollin's regular trademark wonderful cinematography, the play of color, the play of lighting. It's just pretty much a film that's shot like a TV show. It's all held together by the characters, the dialogue, and just the situation that's actually pretty funny. I did find myself laughing at a lot of this. A lot of people will say that the naughty scenes go on for way too long, and I almost agree, but Jackie and Monique, they could have done what they were doing for, you know, another hour. I wouldn't have complained. I wouldn't have complained. So yes, it's a little fun 80-minute sex romp that's actually pretty good. It's just, you know, cinematically uninspired, but I can get like, it doesn't bother me. I've seen much worse looking movies. In fact, it looks actually pretty good for the budget, and the transfer is pretty decent. So it's a fun movie. I'd recommend it if you're looking to 100% Jean Rollin's filmography, and maybe the next time I talk about Rollin, it will actually be about one of his hardcore film that I own. So thank you guys, and see you guys. Jesus Christ, I can't get it back in my goddamn... Here we go. See you guys next time.